Victims, families, and survivors impacted by the Lewiston mass shootings are still grieving. As we approach 1 year since the tragedy, there are some asking questions about how the Maine Community Foundation distributed the money it raised. News Center Maine's Raya Wooten tells us why some feel like the mass shooting was used as a way to invest in the community rather than focus solely on survivors and those who lost loved ones.
I really just think it's important when you give money to something that you know what happens to your money.
Amy Sussman's nephew, Max Hathaway, is one of the 18 victims who were killed in the Lewiston mass shooting. Sussman is still grieving, but in between her grief, Sussman has been digging, asking the Maine Community Foundation questions about why portions of millions donated in response to the mass shooting was distributed to local nonprofits and organizations.
Perhaps the Lewiston-Auburn area could have used some community building prior to the shooting. And I think that this became an opportunity to start doing that a bit.
According to the foundation's website, MCF created the Lewiston-Auburn Response Fund 36 hours after the mass shooting. Two separate funds, one for victims and families and one for local nonprofits, were umbrellaed under that fund. $6.6 million was raised in response to the mass shooting. $4.9 million was divided between victims, families, and survivors. The remaining $1.7 million was distributed to 29 community nonprofits. For example, the YWCA Central Maine in Lewiston confirms funds they received were used to improve building security.
How is that helpful to my nephew's family? And why was my nephew's murder and the murder of 17 others used for your building security? You know, I struggle quite a lot with that.
And Lewiston mass shooting survivor Bobby Nichols, whose sister Tricia Asselin was killed in the shootings, says she too struggles with understanding why MCF included a nonprofit piece, expressing that she feels many survivors and families of victims aren't getting the necessary support they need.
I just feel like we were used, and there's a lot more that I don't know, and I'm sure we're going to find out.
Maine Community Foundation contracted Jeff Dion, who is experienced in helping organizations respond to catastrophic events immediately after the mass shooting. Dion says Maine Community Foundation's initial messaging clearly stated that there were two separate funds available for donors to give to.
Whose decision was it to make a nonprofit piece of this response? And do you feel that that decision, that it was the right time to do that, to make it available for people to donate money to a fund that would go to multiple nonprofits in connection to a mass shooting?
Well, also that was my recommendation, and I continue to stand by that 100%.
Dion's recommendation is one that Becky Conrad supports. She too lost her nephew, Tommy Conrad, in the shootings, and she sat on MCF's steering committee with others who decided how the money raised for organizations should be divided.
It was the nonprofit sector that was helping make sure they knew where they could go get services to understand trauma, fear of having a gunman on the loose for over 2 days. We were in lockdown. Kids that depend on our school department to get their free breakfast and lunch, and it might be the only meals they get, weren't getting fed on Thursday and Friday.
In the end, Conrad reminds people that the whole community suffered a traumatic experience that has lasting impacts.
The bedrock of our community is on the nonprofit sector, the sector that steps in around mission-driven work when the private sector nor the government sector can do what needs to get done.
In Portland, Raya Wooten, News Center, Maine.
Becky Conrad, who was a part of a committee that helped decide which nonprofits received funding, says they had to meet certain criteria to be eligible for funding. For more information on that criteria, you can head to our News Center Maine website.